Hello, hello, and welcome, or should I say, ho, 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 Christmas cousins. I'm cousin Chad.
And I'm cousin Seth.
And I'm
Yes,
Brian.
cousin Seth. And we are here with our guest, Brian. So excited. He's jumping right in. Brian, you can introduce yourself if you want, or I'm happy to introduce you.
Yeah. I'm Brian Monge here, as we were talking about before. In high school, they call me Brian Monge. Either way is fine. I'm a writer. I'm a poet. Well, I started with poetry, and then I moved on into writing, and now I write comics and graphic novels. That's what I'm sticking to right now. So
Yeah, so Brian, we first became aware of you, just happened to kind of cross paths on an IG live that we were doing. And I ended up looking up all your information, checking out. And so, wow, this guy is fascinating. You're
yeah,
a poet, you're a children's book author, you're a graphic novel writer. So I said, let's get in. Originally, just wanted to have you on to talk about your favorite Christmas memories and your cherished
hmm
moments. It's part of our Christmas Chronicles series called My Favorite Christmas Ever. But cousin Seth and I were doing research on you, and you have basically a very captivating story. You evolved from doing short stories to poetry.
yeah,
You kind of trained yourself, which is fascinating, with these nightly rendezvous with literary giants like Pablo Neruda and Langston Hughes, and kind of built your mind this way and learned your craft. So we wanted to get into the inspiration behind some of your story, your enchanting Christmas tales like the Christmas
yeah.
Adventures and Christmas Bandits, and then we'll get into the Christmas Chronicles segment. So welcome. Thank you for joining us,
Thank you.
Brian. It's an honor. You're a super talented guy. So it's very cool to have you on, especially, just to join us and share your talents and then kind of get into some nostalgia as well. So once again,
Of
thank
course.
you. So Brian, tell us a little bit about your journey. Everybody, I think it's kind of very ethereal, like, oh, he's a poet, he's an author, he's a writer, but how do you get into that?
Well, so going in high school, I guess I never was into like writing at all. I didn't like writing at all. It's weird how I got into it because we went through this little hiccup in our life with my parents where we thought they were gonna like lose the house, or well, I wanted to like make some money financially up to the side, and I'm like, well, I don't want to paint because painting takes a lot of time to create a skill. Why not write? And it seems a lot easier. Well, I was wrong because I'm still writing all these years and I'm still learning, but I love
Right.
it. So I'm glad I went with writing and I stuck with it. But no, yeah, I started off writing poetry, writing short stories every night. I would, because I would read these poems and I would read all like a range of different kinds of poems, and I just kind of like the ones that told a story. I started with that, and it progressively like evolved into trying to include something visual, so like a children's book. I ended up I met Alejandro Mesa on Instagram. I saw some of his stuff that he did, some illustrations for other Christmas books. He's actually from Colombia, and I hit him up and I said, "Would you like to collaborate and work on this book?" And he said, "Yeah." So start off with that, and then moved on with Ariel Olivetti, who has done a lot of work with Marvel and DC comics.
Wow.
He's illustrated for Marvel and DC since the '90s. So it was a great honor and real grateful to work with him. So yeah, so now when I was in San Antonio, like we were speaking earlier, I was trying to write some scripts for like short films. But since I moved back to Maryland, I'm sticking to scripts for like graphic novels and comics. So that's where
And
I'm at right now.
and how did it go in where you had the tie-in with Christmas? Because you have the Christmas Adventures, which is a children's book that you wrote, correct? And then you have the
Yeah.
Christmas Bandits, which is a graphic novel. So
Um,
what was the impetus behind that? Do you have a love for the holiday itself, the season?
yeah, of course. I always loved Christmas. And I think as growing up, just watching the movies, I would watch, I don't think I had cable till I was like 10 years old. So I was watching all these like Christmas specials that I never watched as a kid. And it was like, I think back then it was like Boomerang and Cartoon Network. And I just wanted to incorporate something like that, how I felt when I was watching those movies and TV shows. I wanted to incorporate it. Originally, the Christmas book was just going to be one story. I think
Mhm.
it's like 32 pages,
The Christmas
and I
book being the Christmas Bandits or Christmas Adventures?
the Christmas Adventures.
Okay,
So I got the Christmas Adventures in English and Spanish.
awesome.
But with that one, yeah, at first it was just going to be one story, and then I was speaking with Alejandro, and I'm like, why don't we use the same amount of pages and kind of split it into four different stories? That way, I can take advantage and I can write more stories, and then I just want to see more illustrations. I figure I could
Mhm.
bring in more illustrations doing that. So that's what I did with the children's book.
So, and that's the Christmas Bandits. Seth, I don't know if you've gotten to check it out yet. And for those of you listening, so basically, here's the write up. It's so cool
Mhm.
because this is a very unique take. And if you think Santa delivers presents on Christmas Eve without running into monsters and imposters, think again.
Mhm.
Hopefully, this year, Santa finds help in the most unexpected way. A group of scrappy raccoons that aren't afraid to get into a fight. In fact, they love it. And it goes
Mhm.
on. So it's really a one of a kind Christmas story. It's cool because it's not Santa with like this smooth sailing, but he's got this fight going. So you came up with the idea and the story, and who did the illustration?
Ariel Olivetti.
Okay.
He's from Argentina,
Hmm.
and yeah, he's, like I said, he worked with DC and Marvel. He's done Image as well. He Dark Horse, where he's like illustrated like the Aliens versus Predator run. What else? He done the Cable run from like X-Men.
So how did
So
you hook up with him? Because you're a relatively new writer when this came out, correct?
yeah, so um, I didn't really get into comics. I always wanted to get into comics as a kid. I never got the chance. And
Hmm.
then I got nephews in Houston, cousins and nephews in Houston, and we're gonna go to my nephews who were like little kids at that time. And I went to a comic store, and I just got like a bunch of little single comics. I had no idea how comics work. I didn't even know what the singles were and the graphic novels. I had
Right.
no idea about omnibus or none of that. And I got hooked into reading that. That's when I tried to like to shift my writing to graphic novels. But since I didn't get into comics as into my late 20s, I don't know. I have no idea who like these artists are or who these writers
Right.
are. And I didn't know Ariel Olivetti at that time. I actually just saw his page on Instagram. I liked this illustration. I hit him up because I was working on a different book
Hmm.
where it's just consisted of short stories. And I wanted someone to illustrate just kind of like a front cover for each short story. And I hit him up and I told him I wanted him to illustrate the front cover for the short stories. And he gave me a price and I told him I would get back to him.
Okay.
Um, but I never did. I just got busy and never got back. And then I'm, one day walking into the comic store and I see his name and I'm like, is that the same guy that, I
Yeah.
was speaking to? And I looked on my, Instagram and all that. And I'm like, oh shit, I was like, oh damn, that's him. And
Right.
so
Right.
at the time I didn't really think about collaborating with him, but I wrote this story. I just wanted to kind of challenge myself, and I wrote this poetry where like each line rhymed. I wanted, I challenged myself, and I was like, "What's the craziest thing I can come up with?" Like, what would be crazy? I'll be like, "Well, what about some raccoons that jump Santa on Christmas?" And
Right.
then they end up helping him, and they end up fighting some monsters, and so it took me a while to write that story because like I was on it like every night, and it was just like very challenging. And then when I
Right.
finished, I liked it, and
Well, you didn't have much to go on either. There's not many stories where Santa Claus is getting jumped on Christmas Eve
yeah.
and befriending the people. It's completely unique. So
Yeah, and just like the name of the villain is Ken Tusk, and I liked it. And I'm just wanted to incorporate that somehow with that story, and I'm like, okay, um, but yeah, in the story, I got this. Well, the original poem that I wrote called "The Christmas Bandits." I actually had like Danny DeVito helping them with the Christmas. I don't know why. Like I had Danny DeVito on his giant duck that he had like in the Batman movie. Uh, I just incorporated that because I thought it'd be funny. But when I wrote the book, I'm like, I don't want to get sued or have Dan DeVito like after me.
right, right,
So I kind of replaced his character with a female character. Um,
So, oh, sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
When you finally, I say, agree with everything with the illustrator and you guys are going to do it, do you have the story pretty much worked out, fleshed out at that point, and you go to him and present it? And then, yeah, I guess, and how does the collaboration work? Are you guys doing it simultaneously or I'm
Yeah,
sure?
somewhat. I already had the story written. Like I already had the poem written, and I
Okay.
sent it to him, and he reads and he's like, "Well, I need a script." And at that time, I had never written a script. He's like, "I need you to write a script, like page one, 5 panels, and then describe what each panel is going to have. And if there's a dialogue, put the dialogue in." And then he was kind enough to send me some samples of other scripts he's worked on or other
Oh,
comics
nice.
that
right.
Okay.
writers have sent him. And so based off of that, I modified and I wrote a script out of my poem and I sent it to him. And I try to make it Um, I try to make it because the more pages I have, the more I have to pay. So I wanted to give like a decent, I think we ended up with 100 pages. I think that's what it was, 100 pages. So, but then those pages, I try to give like a decent story, but not too much where I end up paying a lot more because it's money.
Yeah, it's
Yeah, it probably,
fascinating how. Yeah, go on, Seth.
I don't say it probably forces your writing a little bit too to
Yeah.
condense it and make it a little more. But that's interesting. So you got a crash course in this new type style of writing and stuff, and on top of that, you said you're writing with this not screenshots. What are they called? I'm
Well,
blanking
like
on the name.
panels,
Storyboard,
the
like story
panels.
panels. Yeah.
Thank you,
Oh.
thank you. So, yeah, but it's was that really difficult trying to learn that or adapt what you had done and kind of what you were seeing to this
No,
format?
it wasn't really difficult. I think sometimes I feel like things seem a lot harder than they really are. But once you step into it and start doing it, you realize that it's not that hard. It's just little steps here and just put in the work, and it came out great.
It's kind of
Wow.
reorganizing the things that you
It,
know already,
it's
and just like, how does this apply?
well, yeah. There's a lot of thought to it. So like I have to like think about how it would come across on the pages, and how do I
Mhm.
want that scene to be told within those panels. But
And Brian,
yeah,
what? Let's get back to beyond the process. So you figured that out on the job. So what about when you finally saw the completed one? Because that's what's fascinating. You learned how to
yeah,
do it. It was an idea, and then to see it actually done and completed. Take us back to that moment. Must have been like so rewarding for you.
yeah. It was really awesome. It's definitely a big accomplishment that I've had. It
Yeah.
was like that with the Christmas story with the Children's illustration, but this one was just, it's I think it's kind of like the same feeling with a director who's who's had a lot of people work on the film, and then to see the end product and show it, and have that screen. And I didn't have a screening with the book, but to have that screening, I think it's kind of like the same feeling of accomplishment, and
Yeah.
it was great. So I was,
And what about your family? How did they receive it? They must be like, wow, this is so cool, because you weren't doing this. You weren't, like you said, a kid growing up saying, I'm going to be writing graphic novels. You came to this a little bit later.
yeah, they were excited and happy. I think they've always known that I've had some kind of like, I've always was going to be some type of artist.
Yeah.
As a little kid, I was always drawing. I didn't pursue drawing or illustrating, but I was always doing that as a kid. I remember people saying they thought I was going to be a tattoo artist,
Mhm.
but I never was. And then in high school, every single uh, alternative class, it was always art, whether it was like
Right, right.
clay making or painting or something. I just enjoy doing art. And it's weird because I never pursued anything as a kid or as a teenager, but as an adult,
Mhm.
I'm kind of, I guess you start discovering yourself and discovering what
Yeah,
types of things you want to do in life, and what makes you happy. And just art for me is that. So
that's amazing.
yeah,
So for those of you who are listening who are Christmas lovers, Brian has the Christmas Bandits, which is the adult graphic novel, or for adults. It's not an adult graphic
yeah,
novel,
yeah,
it's for adults. It's a little different. And then you also have the Christmas Adventures in English and Spanish, which is the
yeah.
child's book. But there's one other one before we get into your favorite Christmas ever, because that's the whole crux of the show today. You have
Yeah.
I am going to be downloading this on Kindle later. Seth, you will love this. It sounds fascinating. He has a book called Thoughts of a Madman at 3 a.m., a graphic
Yeah.
novel as well, and
Oh,
says, what
nice.
keeps us awake at night? It's almost never the comfort and delight of our successes. It's almost
Hmm.
never our inner peace and validation cradling us asleep. What keeps us up is the chaos that harbors in our head about which no one else knows. I love that
Yeah.
opening. I'm in. I want to read it, Seth. I
Yeah,
think you'd like it too. It's kind of sounds like just
absolutely.
getting into the psyche of human beings. Brian, what's
Yeah.
with that book? It sounds fascinating.
It's the first poetry book I came out with. What's it's a lot stepping off the topic of a Christmas, but it was a time of my life when I was, struggling with some personal stuff, well, like mostly drinking. And so I think we all do at a young age. We kind of are confused with what we're doing, and um, poetry just kind of worked as therapy for me. So,
Right.
and it helped me express myself. I was able to kind of like pinpoint to the exact words I wanted to say or express myself with poetry, and that book was a result of that. So
Wow.
It was therapeutical, and yeah, it's like I said, I started doing poetry. I started doing short stories into my poetry, and that's one of the books that I have with that collection. I got this other one, another collection I have, but it has not been published yet. I've kind of put that in the back burner for now and just started focusing on just these graphic novels instead. And then
Yeah.
after writing that book, I kind of wanted, I guess it helped me discover that I wanted to write something more joyful, something like Christmas.
Right.
So that's why I started doing these 2 Christmas books.
That's
So
such a cool journey that you went
yeah,
from being open and honest and vulnerable and telling your own journey. Everyone has struggles, but yours
yeah,
is a story where you came out on the right side and better and stronger, and were able to find your voice and
yeah,
be creative and successful in this manner with books like that. I'm sure it helps other people as well and inspires them, but then also to counter it with the joyful, mirthful Christmas stories must feel good to you to just be able to write that and lose yourself in that world. So let's get
yeah,
into this then, Brian, because I know you said you love Christmas, you love the season.
yeah.
Let's talk about your favorite Christmas ever. Let's start from the beginning. Do you have a specific single year that was your favorite Christmas ever?
Uh, before this interview, I had to call my mom and my sister, and I was like talking about that, like, because we've had, when we spent Christmas, it was just us, it was just my sisters, it was just my parents, and I grew up in Maryland, in Montgomery County. It's a little bit up north, and I think it was what made it special was it was also like my mom's birthday, Christmas Eve. It was my
Hmm,
mom's birthday, and even though it's her birthday, she always tried to make it special for us, and she
right.
was always, decorating the house. It was always that's what I liked. But most of all, I think I don't have a really a favorite Christmas. It's I just remember like certain things, my parents going out their way for certain Christmases. I know there were times where they were struggling with finances themselves and probably
Mhm,
pushed aside things they wanted to get, and they got
right.
me like an N64 one year. I remember when the Nintendo 64 came out. I remember like every day leading up to Christmas, I would ask if I could just open it, and they're like, "No, you gotta wait, you gotta
Oh, you
wait."
knew it was in
Yeah.
there.
I went with my dad, and we went to Sears together. He told me, "What do you want?" Because and my dad, both my parents came from El Salvador.
Right.
Um, if I were to tell him, "Can you get me a Nintendo 64?" He probably wouldn't even know how to go and ask for it at the store.
Right.
So
Plus,
he
in
took
your
me
head, Brian, you're worried Santa might get jumped by raccoons. So you're like, Dad, let's get it ourselves. Don't worry
raccoons
about
or who knows what.
it.
But
Yeah.
yeah, he ended up getting like this Nintendo 64, and I was probably like 6 or 7 at the time, and it was like one of those with it came with a game, and the game was
Yeah.
like Fighter's Destiny, which I think at the time, since I was 6 or 7, the game was like for teenagers. But
Mhm.
I thought it was so cool that I was playing like this, game meant for teenagers. And I was like, younger, but it wasn't even that violent. It was just like some blood coming out. It was just a fighting
Right.
game. And I
That
remember,
is, and that's a big gift. The N64s were not
yeah,
cheap.
Yeah.
well, I think a couple years before that, I went to a friend's house and they had the Super Nintendo and they were playing the Batman game, the
Mhm.
with Michael Keaton, the
Right.
Batman game, and it had like that whole Christmas theme to it. And
Yeah.
I think that's what wanted me to get like the next console because my parents couldn't afford that Super Nintendo. But you
Right.
know, when I think about Christmas, I think sometimes I think about that movie as well, like the Batman movie with Michael
Mhm.
Keaton and all the Tim Burton special effects and the signs going in that. I think I think as a child, I think about that as Christmas as well.
Hmm.
So. Mhm.
That's, I'm sorry, were you saying, Seth?
Yeah, no, say you made reference to Danny DeVito and as the Penguin. That was the
Yeah,
same
that is
one,
true.
right?
Yeah,
Oh,
Okay.
yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
So
That's
obviously
interesting.
a
So
big
that's all
impact.
in his Seth. That's like part of his formative psyche, right? This Batman, Christmas, Danny DeVito. So now we're seeing how it all unraveled. This is interesting.
Yeah.
yeah. I think it is
Cool.
interesting because it's not until like you're asked these questions to like look back and reflect, and you're like, because sometimes you do things just because it makes you feel good, it makes you happy,
Right.
but you don't know the actual root or like where it originated from, and it's
Right.
not until you start thinking and reflecting back, and it's having discussions like this where you're like, oh, that's why I like doing this. So it's
Yeah.
fun.
That's That is cool. That's inspiring. We're kind of unraveling stuff maybe you're not even realizing. So let's
Yeah,
get deeper
exactly.
into it, and then we're going to send you a bill afterwards for this session, Brian.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll send it to Seth.
That's right. He doesn't
Exactly.
need the money. He's good. So, all right, here we go. So so it's not just one Christmas morning, but just Christmases of your youth. When you first woke up, were there, like, what do you remember? What was that feeling? And were there any special traditions, like special meals or food or smells that you had? Take us back to those mornings right now.
So, like I mentioned, my parents are from El Salvador, and I guess it's a Central American thing, but they don't celebrate Christmas on Christmas Day. They celebrate it the night before. So
Okay.
when we like celebrated, we always celebrated that night before in open presents even the night before. We didn't open presents on the 25th. We opened presents on the 24th and play around with it with them a little bit, and then the next morning would just be dedicated to playing with that stuff. But it's I think it's like other countries do it as well because my girlfriend she was born on an American base in Germany. Her mom is German, and they celebrate it the same way. They celebrate where they have to, the night before on Christmas Eve, and then the next morning, they just enjoy. They just sit back and it's just a chill get together and play with their toys. But they open their
Oh, that's
presents on
interesting.
Christmas Eve as well. Yeah,
Huh.
so I'm not sure
So
if
it's
it's
not a big Christmas morning thing, then it's Christmas Eve
no,
that you
yeah,
had.
it's more of Christmas Eve is when we have all the family over. We get together, we make a big dinner, a big feast, and then we open the
Still to this
presents.
day. Still to
Yeah,
this day, you do it
still
that
to
way.
this day. And then
Wow.
yeah, especially with my girl now, we I always try to go to both families. So we either go to my family first and then her family, or vice versa.
Right.
And just do that, and then the next day is just relax and chill on the 25th.
Okay, so what happened though? So let's go to the time where you actually unravel. You now know you have the N64, right?
Yeah.
You're 6, 7, whatever, a little Brian, and you know
hmm
you're about to, I'm assuming it's gift wrapped but you know what it is, but still gift wrapped, right? You're ready to,
Yeah.
you're like, this is the moment. How excited were you? You turned it on. Did it live up to the hype? To this day, do you look back and you're just like, anytime you see an N64, are you just like, that just brings back more memories for you?
Yeah, I mean, even just now you bringing it up, just like putting that image of me like opening it up, you can actually smell. You know how you open the cartridge, and you can
Yeah.
like it had like that plastic smell to it. I could actually even smell it right now, like when you got to blow into it and then put it in, it had that fresh smell.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was just excited. I just wanted to uh to just learn everything about it. As a kid, you pick up things a lot easier. It's
Right.
um I think it's like the first time I've ever had anything complex where you got so many. It's not that complex now looking back, but as a kid, something with that much buttons on a controller and trying to figure out like all these combos on a fighting thing, like it's a lot of it's what's the word I'm trying to say? It's a lot of getting used to it, or you have to. It's like
Yeah.
a crash course. You have to like teach yourself real fast in order to enjoy the game. And I
Yeah,
remember
get that
doing
like
that.
hand-eye coordination, stuff like
Exactly.
that. And it's like you
Yeah.
can't. I mean, you get frustrated and you
Yeah.
hurl the controller at the wall.
Yeah.
And back then it was still connected to the console, so you
So the whole
destroy
thing.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I remember that you guys, my friends had that, what's it called, that duck hunting game
Yeah,
for like Super
right.
Nintendo.
Uh-huh.
That looked so awesome to me as a kid. But to this day I've never played it, but maybe one day. But I just wanted to have that game too. With the little, what is it, like a shotgun or a sniper? You shoot
Yeah,
the
yeah.
ducks down.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's
But
interesting, Brian, so sorry, my dogs are going crazy now, but
oh
what's interesting, so you kind of were like, I'm going to set my mind to it and learn how to play this game. Then
yeah,
later in life, unwittingly, maybe this influenced you because then you're like, I want to learn poetry and writing. So I'm going to
yeah,
sit down every night and read great poets and teach myself how to do this. So
yeah.
that Christmas must have influenced and shaped your future, basically.
Yeah, it gives you, I think, both curiosity and confidence. You're curious to learn something new, and then afterwards, when you start accomplishing little tasks, like little, I guess, even like little combos or like defeating like missions throughout the game, you get a little confidence. That's what was happening with me in poetry. As soon as I finish a
Yeah.
story, I'm like, okay, well, that turned out okay. Let me challenge myself and do something, something a little bit more challenging, a little harder, and just kept doing that.
I
Was
love
there
that.
anybody that was
Yeah.
giving you direction or kind of like saying, "Hey, Brian, maybe check out read these authors or these poets and stuff like that?
No,
Excuse me.
I think the time that I started getting into things, kind of worked out for me, because if I would have done this like in the 90s or any other decade,
Yeah.
YouTube didn't exist and the internet didn't, have this vast knowledge of what we have right now. So everything I just either looked it up, or I went to like Barnes and Nobles or the library and checked out, like we were talking about, like Pablo Neruda or other poets, that would just read on them, try to learn what was their style, and wanted to see if that was my style or not. So
Yeah.
yeah, a lot of it was just self research, and then I still do it to this day. It's I think art is one of those things that is just, if you start researching and start looking into, it's like a rabbit hole. Like you'll
Yeah.
start, it's like you'll go in for one reason, start looking to that, and then it will like branch out into different stuff. Like when I look into music, like sometimes I'll like start looking into like I'll start listening to like just 60s music. And then afterwards it'll be like a certain artist. And I'll be like, okay, well now I want to learn more about this artist. And then I started listening to their music, and then I started listening to just that one album. And then I want to find out what made them
Right.
write that album. I'm starting to like look up like their bios and their
Yeah.
documentaries about them. And it's just like a big rabbit hole. And I think that's the same with any art. So that's
Yeah.
what happened with me when I was starting with poetry. I did the same thing with the poets, and then as I evolved, I started doing the same thing with like children's book and graphic novels and comic book illustrators, comic book writers, and even try to incorporate stuff outside of the comic book world into like other art outside that comic book world into what I write now. So
That
it's
is so
just
cool. It's so
yeah,
inspiring because you didn't have a path handed to you. You just got into it and figured it out, and you loved it, and now you're doing it. And I know my
yeah.
son's way into graphic novels. He draws every night when he can.
Oh,
He's
nice.
into like the anime and stuff. So I want to show him your work as well and tell him about this
Oh yeah,
interview and what you did too. And hopefully it'll inspire him more to keep going and put out his own work. So
yeah,
this is really cool. So I mean, I just, this kind of stuff is inspiring to me. I love the Christmas angle as well, and
yeah,
hearing that and finding out that maybe these Christmases influenced you more than maybe even realized it in some of
yeah.
your creative influences. But just your journey and coming through and making it and teaching yourself, I think that's something we can all be inspired by. So congratulations to you,
Appreciate
Brian.
it.
Before we wrap it up, is there, I want everybody to check out your website, mongeculture.com,
Yep.
mongeculture.com. It's an easy way to say it for me, at least.
Yeah,
So,
that's it.
okay. So mongeculture.com, you can buy his books there, his graphic novels. They're available on Kindle. Brian,
Mhm.
what else? Is there anything else to plug or anything in the works that you want to tell us about before we wrap up here?
Yeah, I actually got two books that I've been working on for 2 years with so the graphic novel The Christmas Bandits, from the
Mm,
time I spoke with Ariel to the time it was published, it was like within like a year, 12
mm,
months. And he was fast. He illustrated and colored it. And then with
wow.
these other two books, I used some different artists, but it's taking a little longer. So I'm finding out like how every artist works differently, their own style. And then but I got these two books. One, it's a horror. It's somewhat of a horror, so it's a little different than Christmas. It's about some park rangers. They're trying to solve some mysteries that are going on. People disappearing, people getting killed, and obviously as they start exploring it, it has to do with like some paranormal monsters and whatnot. And the whole reason I did that was because I would listen to like YouTube channels like this, and that told stories. And there was this
Right.
one that would talk about like all these like weird stuff happening in national parks, and like one of them was like people or park rangers like seeing like random stairs pop in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the woods or the middle of the forest. Have you guys ever heard of that? Like just stairs,
No.
and it'd be like different
No,
stairs, like some with carpet, some with different rails, and it's like this phenomenon. It's weird. It's so weird, but like little things like that, kind of like, oh, that'd be interesting to write a story about. Um, the whole book isn't just about the stairs, but I did incorporate that little thing in that.
that's
But
very cool.
I got those two. Those scripts are written. I'm just waiting on the illustrators to finish that. But I'm working on this other script right now, and coincidentally, I'm not sure if it's just coincidence or what, but it revolves around Christmas time. So
Is it the
and I'm like,
Christmas Cousins novel? Because the Christmas
yeah,
Cousins novel is going to be like a sell
Well-
100 million copies easy.
Well, the thing is, like, it's going to be a love story, so I'll be looking into Seth's. I'll be keeping up with Seth and his dating, and try to kind
Yes.
of get inspired from that and incorporate it. So
Yes, Mrs. X. She can be
Yeah.
one of your
she
heroes.
gets
Yeah.
Yes.
she gets
And I'll-
she gets proposed at a Comic-Con. So
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's I don't know if you heard, but yeah, she
Or a
agreed
Christmas
to
con,
it.
right?
A Christmas
Right.
con, yes,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. But she
Yeah.
might be in other cons. Maybe that'll
Yeah.
be the honeymoon. We'll just go to different cons.
Yeah,
Comic
love that.
Con.
and
Right, so
repeat the
you-
vows in each one.
What's that?
Repeat the vows in each one.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Have
Yeah,
a
see,
different
that-
character or something, or some cosplay person officiate a different one.
Yeah.
Right. Seth, you're inspiring poetry, you're inspiring books, millions of listeners worldwide. Your love story is amazing. And Brian, that is definitely a good way to get a lot of sales. Throw Cousin Seth on there. He's beloved worldwide figure. So,
Yeah.
similar to Santa Claus almost, I would say. So just
I
the
would
kids,
have-
every
I don't know
adults
about
love them.
that.
Yeah.
I would have to interview him and try to get into his mind so I can do the character justice. So
Oh, good luck with that, Brian.
Yeah.
It's going to be the biggest frustration you've ever encountered in your life.
Seth and I have been working on that since the 70s. Hasn't quite worked
Yeah.
out yet.
I might just give up on writing after interviewing him.
I don't
Awesome.
know.
Well,
This
Brian-
just goes every direction, but the one I needed to.
Exactly. Well, Brian, thank you so much for joining
Yes,
us again.
thank
Well,
you.
thank you.
Everybody, check him out, mongeculture.com, MONGE culture.com. Really amazing story, great writing, great books. I'm looking forward to reading your Madman book as well. That looks fantastic. And we hope to have you back to follow up, and we will be following your successes and your journey. And thank you again, Brian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.